I'm a sculptor and I create monuments. I just completed the first piece, the first monument to Mamie Till-Mobley and to Emmett Till. But before that, there was a really incredible monument that I did, and it was called the MLK Living Memorial. This is kind of a gateway piece for me. I was asked by a group called Chicago Public Art Group to work with a master artist named John Pittman Weber, and we began looking at sites. We were commissioned by Iman, the Inner City Muslim Action Network, and they wanted to represent the community that was changing. They also wanted to put a monument to the site where Martin Luther King Jr. got struck by a rock and deemed Chicago the most violent city in America. This is the sculpture that you're looking at. It's carved brick and took 2 years for us to complete from inception to the end. As you look at it, there are 3 stela that stand in the center of a plaza that's 42 by 40. And each of the stela has a tableau or a low relief image on it. You're also seeing it from above, and it looks like, I don't know, the Milky Way galaxy. I wanted to put actually a second sidewalk so that you could see the spiral. One of the reasons that we designed it this way is so that when you walk upon this monument, that you become a part of the procession and you are actually a part of history. This is Martin Luther King Jr. at Soldier Field, or orating and speaking to the people. And these marches were incredibly peaceful. So you're looking at the historic images of this march that was happening in Marquette Park. And as we were marching, or as he was marching, somebody actually threw a brick and he was struck in the head. And I know that it looks violent on this end, but these men are actually pushing his head down and protecting him, and they ushered him off to a synagogue very quickly. This is the Packers Union were actually the ones that were protecting him and covered his head and got him to safety. When we unveiled this, we actually found the black man that was in this photograph. And it was really incredible. We had searched all of the books, and the history books, and his name was never mentioned. And I happened to be doing a residency, and the speaker there was a formerly incarcerated person who was tortured by John Burge. And he wanted to know what I was working on, and I said, the MLK Living Memorial, want to see some pictures? And I was sitting next to somebody, and I said, yeah, we're working on this tableau right now of King getting hit in the head by a rock, and I'm looking for this man who actually protected him. And the woman sitting next to me said, oh, that's my best friend's father. And so, yeah, that's amazing. So we invited him to the unveiling, and he was suffering from dementia. But when we mentioned this, he actually perked up and came out, and we were able to celebrate that moment with him. These are what people call the counter-protesters, but they're actually the rioters. And the white people started throwing bricks and bottles and waving horrible signs, turning over cars, as you can see. This monument was put in the place where this happened. That gas station still exists. This is me carving. And actually, you'll be able to see my partner. You can see that the stelas are incredibly tall and weighty. So we actually could only carve half of them 5 feet at a time. So I'm carving the top half first, and then the bottom half. And then we didn't get to see the whole thing put together until the masons did it. Beautiful, incredible artwork. It's literally carved brick. The bricks are twice the size of these bricks that you're looking at. They're actually half cinder block size. They're about 8 to 12 pounds each. They do not have the cores, the holes punched out. So they're solid so that we can keep the pattern going. We use imagery from MLK's beloved community, and it was just an incredible 2 years working side by side with that guy. You can actually see some of the MLK imagery, and you can see that as you move around the stela, the tableaus kind of open like books. So you're kind of reading these two at a time, and then you move around, and then there's another unfolding of the story. I really just wanted to show these. This is the raw brick. When it's fired, because of the iron oxide, it turns red. I really just wanted to show this imagery because it's very hard to see in photograph, but it's so beautiful. You can see on the far left that there's like legs of cops and billy clubs, and then there's a whole scene of marchers. And they are every denomination and every race and every age group. But then you can also see kind of the arms of the rioters, and we took that directly from the historic photographs. As you're moving around these things, there's actually this beautiful tableau, and John and I work separately. Sometimes, like the imagery of all of the women sitting on the stoop, I did personally, and then he did some as well. And this is more in line with the way he works, and just kind of cutting things up and making a little bit more collage. And this is just such beautiful work. I'm glad I get to show it off. That's us on site as the Masons were putting it together. And there it is. And we really love it. It's lined with limestone and capped with limestone. There's engravings and quotes, and in the center there's a bronze plaque. We did 10 or more community charrettes where we have about 400 community tiles that were made in the theme of home, and people got to express themselves in any way they wanted. And so we had people come out from 3 years old with their parents to 93, and literally they just shoved their baby's hands in the clay. And so it's a really nice memory of this piece. And it was landscaped really beautifully with native plants. And then this is like, we're just about to get into some like really heavy subject matter. And this is the first tribute and monument to Mamie Till-Mobley. It's long overdue, and to her son, Emmett Till. I was commissioned to do this. I was competing against my sculpture teacher, and we both wanted each other to do it. And my sculpture teacher, with his beautiful heart, said that it was time for him to pass the baton to the younger generation, and also he wanted a woman to represent her. I'm also a teacher and also a community builder, activist. And so Mamie Till is this beautiful creature that, I don't know how she did it, had the grace and the wisdom to put her son on display and showed this horrifying lynching that happened for no reason at all. So I was under a lot of pressure to represent her fully, and in her beauty too. I mean, she was absolutely cherubic, as well as her son. And so I decided to put her walking from a podium because she was a teacher, and she was also this person who sparked the civil rights movement. It was because of the death of her son that we started that. And so she was immaculate in many ways, and I was really meditating and praying every day that I represented her in the highest way. These are some incredible historic photos, and of course she doesn't exist on this planet anymore, so that's pretty much the only thing that I had to go by. I looked at several images of her and her face when she was in mourning, when she was, as she grew old, before she had Emmett, and that's how I created her. I was also in talks with her family. She is survived by nieces and aunts. And the outfit that you're looking at is what I sculpted. It's just beautiful, that pleated skirt. And before doing this, before being commissioned for the sculpture, I actually lost 3 members of my family very quickly within 1 month, this month. And one of the people that left, my brother left first, and then my dad couldn't live without him, and so my brother died on Mother's Day, and then my father on Father's Day. And then my grandmother, actually, who was 98, died. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because she was a seamstress, and I really had to channel her in order to do the clothing on Mamie Till. I really just asked for her guidance, just to put all those pleats in the right place. And there she is. So when I sculpted her, I wanted to reunite Emmett with his mother for very obvious reasons. And so I decided to tell the Emmett Till story, to reunite them through the podium, using the podium as a surrogate for Emmett. So the podium tells the story of Emmett Till. On the front, it is the essence of boyhood. There's 2 fishing poles that are in water and bobbing around because he and his mother fished together, and it was a very joyful act for them. And then there's 2 cranes on the side. There's lots of symbolism. There's lots of Easter eggs there, so that as children walk past this sculpture and grow up with it, they have many, many little beautiful symbols of rabbits and butterflies and things to look at as they grow. And there it is. I did this whole sculpture out of my head. There are very few drawings, and that image just came to me, and all of that is sculpted by me. And Sadie's hand. I used Sadie's hand when she did a studio visit. This is me sculpting. I just used low relief. I put clay directly onto the podium. The podium is like 80 years old. I asked Argo Community High School, who commissioned me, if they had a podium at their school, because podiums are very expensive, and they found this, and it's so old that Mamie Till herself might have actually used it. Each side of the podium tells a part of the Emmett Till story, and this is the side that is the lynching. And so that's the barn. You see it through to protect the audience, and mostly to protect the family and people who have lost children to violence. To protect them, I surrounded everything by cotton plants, which is a symbol of protection in Native American culture. So you're sort of looking at it through a lens. And then the last scene is the historic funerary procession. And I asked the family if it was possible that I could use the scene of the open casket, and they gave me their blessing. I love this because everybody asked me about Mamie Till's skirt and how it kind of fans out and there's so much movement. And as I'm walking through ACA, which is quickly becoming the blueprint for all of our dreams, I see this gorgeous plant. And, this palm is the source of like all of the artwork that I'm doing right now, but also it is exactly the way I created Mamie Till's skirt. That form is just so beautiful. And as you look around the edge of Mamie Till's skirt, you'll see birds, butterflies, and and plant life. And so I work with mothers who have lost children to violence, and I ask them to contribute. So there's a representation. Each one of those birds, butterflies, or flowers represents somebody who was killed. I just felt like Mamie would love that. So when I do monuments and memorials, they are very engaged through my work in the community. And this is an awe moment because that you're looking at a historic photograph of Emmett Till, who is on the left, and then his best friend, Reverend Wheeler Parker. And then there's a little baby on the handlebars, and that guy in the center is the baby. I know, and he came to the unveiling, which is so incredible. I mean, like, I just can't believe my life. And then that's the portrait of Emmett that I used. It's not the high contrast portrait that we have seen so many times and that people have told so many lies around. I really wanted everybody to be confronted with his innocence and his youth. This is the beautiful campus, and there she is. I worked with the architectural firm, and they built a podium for her, or a pedestal. I really wanted her on the ground, and I thought I got everything I wanted from this project, so she's up put high. But then, you know, I let them have that. And then they made these beautiful curved benches, and also there's markers. And what's happening on those curved benches is all of the students were engaged in the work that I was doing. As I was sculpting her, I was going in and doing master classes with them, and they were creating artwork around the life of Emmett Till. And so we're going to kind of mosaic the front of those benches in black and white images of the civil rights movement, and those markers actually tie all of the sites because the Mamie Till story takes place in Summit and in Mississippi. And there it is from above. And there she is in all of her glory. And so I also do other work, and this is what I'm working on right now. These are 10-foot high lanterns that are 4 feet around, and they are going to be in the Back of the Yards neighborhood. This is the first time I've ever shown them. And the Back of the Yards neighborhood, if you don't know Chicago, is what Upton Sinclair was writing about. It's the neighborhood that had the stockyards, is what they call it. And what Chicago is doing is moving the median on Damon Avenue to one side of the street and making this street that was north and south. It's like combining it, so it's a north and south instead of one-way streets. And they commissioned me to do a redesign of that median once it gets pushed, and this is what it's gonna look like. So they wanted that serpentine sidewalk, and I did these little bump outs, and I'm gonna be working with the community to tell stories in mosaic on the semicircular seating that's there through basket weave and textiles, indigenous textiles, and then the lanterns will be in the center, so it'll be like the home and hearth. And then I work with the Mother's Healing Circle in 2020. I was actually working with these women when my family died, and I had been placed in this community as somebody that's very sensitive and that would care for them in the right way, to work with women that had lost children very violently. Their last vision of their child was in a public space. And so I lost my family while I was doing a very big project with them, and decided that I couldn't kind of live without them. So I started the Mother's Healing Circle in January 2020. So we do a lot of legacy projects together. We honor their children through the arts, and then I also try to stabilize their central nervous system as well, ground them through sonic vibrations, through meditations, and through things like quilting. And so they made all of these quilts. And I had this bright idea that all of the flagpoles across from where we do all of this work, that the quilt should be flown there, you know? And so SAIC Home and Square was very supportive of my dream, and they printed, I digitally shot all of the quilts, they printed them for me and created a beautiful book, and we hung these gorgeous flags. And I don't even know if I put a picture of it, but I do have a video. So now we can use the acoustics.
Yes! Yay, Aaron!
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to thank ACA for recognizing the work that I do, and I really want to thank my associate artists for all the support. 193.
God. 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 God.
All right. Thank you so much for coming, all of you. So I'll perform a little more for you shortly, but first I'm going to talk to you just a little about my practice and try to offer some insights into the ways in which experimentation has contributed to my creative process. Initially, I composed only for myself. And the work that I'm best known for involves compositions for solo voice and electronics, much like the short pieces I opened with, the short piece that I just opened with, which, by the way, is one of the earliest of my voice and electronics pieces that still remains in my repertoire. I do live sampling, processing, and looping of my voice in real time, and sometimes use projected video. And I often manipulate these elements with wireless gesture-controlled instruments. Two elements that I'm quite fond of in my work are found texts and alphabetized lists. I've always loved lists, especially alphabetized ones. I find them to be tremendously poetic because of the sonic properties of the kind of repetition and gradual morphing that occurs in them. It's a bit like rhyme, but in my opinion, it's almost better than rhyme because it's less predictable. One of my favorite pieces of mine remains a very short found text piece that I made in the mid-1980s. And I'll play just a little bit of that piece for you.
You stand out. You started laughing. You started me dreaming. You started something. You started something. You stayed away too long. You stayed on my mind. You stepped into my life. You stepped out of a dream. You stepped out of a dream. You stepped out of a dream. You still get to me.
And now I'm just going to
still
actually
got it.
reveal what the source
still
of this
move
found
me.
text is.
You still want me. You stole my heart. You stopped loving me. You sure got this old redneck feeling blue. You sure know how to party. You sure know how to use the things you use. You sure love to ball. You sure make cheating seem easy. You sure tell it like it is, George Jones. You take a little bit of it home. You take me for granted. You take me to heaven. You take me up. You take my breath away. You take my breath away. You take my heart away. You take my heart home with you.
So that piece. So if you're old enough to, you probably recognize what that piece of paper was. But so there used to be these things called record stores. And in the middle of every record store, this is before we all had computers, there used to be this giant book. It looked kind of like an overgrown telephone book with like thousands of sort of onion skin yellow pages. And it was the phonologue, and it was a list of every song title that was currently in print. And so when you would walk into the record store and say to the clerk, "I want that song. I don't know who does it, but it goes. It's about love, and it's so they could go in that book and try to look it up for you by it was cross-referenced by title, artist, and composer, and so on and so forth. So when I worked at Tower Records back in the '80s, one of my duties was to update the phonologue, and so I used to actually have to take the pages out. They would send in the mail every week a little envelope that was full of all the new pages and instructions that said, please remove page 1024 and replace it with pages 1024A and 1024B. And you would go through and take them out of the binder and put the new pages in. And so I was doing that. I took out a page and I started reading it. I was like, oh, this is a piece. So that's where Pop Titles You came from. When that piece also includes another element that is a staple of my work, out-of-phase loops. When I first started doing works for voice and electronics, I was using separate hardware devices, including a stack of 19-inch wide digital delay units, outboard multi-effects processors, and a rack-mountable sampler, all mounted in a portable but very heavy 6-space rack with a big old Mackie mixer board sitting on top. And everything was packed together and patched together in the back with like a rat's nest of spaghetti spilling out of the back of the rack. I started with just one digital delay when I first started doing these works for voice and electronics, and then I just started adding delays. Every time you wanted a new effect, you had to just go to the music store and buy another box. And so when I had two of them, I decided that I wanted to make something where I had both of the two delays in sync with each other. And so, as you know, like, they're called, or as you may or may not know, they're called digital delays because the recording that it makes when it samples you is a digital recording. But in those old hardware delays, all of the controls and everything on them were analog. And so there was no MIDI yet, so you couldn't like slave one of them to the other and get a clock. So I sat there for hours trying to get 2 delays to be in the same time together. And I would turn that little knob a tiny bit, and then it was, for the time. And then I would start singing, and I was like, it was kind of together, and then slowly it would start to drift apart. And I just must have sat there for an hour trying to do that until I started listening, and I was like, oh my God, that is beautiful, when I heard the loops drifting apart from each other. And I was so ignorant. I thought I had invented the thing. I had no idea that 20 years earlier, Steve Reich had done this with tape loops. And so I fell in love with the sound of loops moving in and out of phase with each other. And to this day, almost all of my works include some out of phase loops. And but now, of course, with I'm now doing all of it in the computer, and so now everything is digital, and so the loops are completely accurate. And so now, if I want out of phase loops, I have to deliberately set them up. So if I put 2 things at 1,000 milliseconds, they're going to be 1,000 milliseconds forever. You could go out and have a bite to eat and come back, and it's still 1,000 milliseconds, exactly. So I'm using a Max Patch. This is a software that I use for doing the processing on my voice now. And I have all the delays that I used to have in my rack stacked up in the delay patch, and I've even named them after the delays that I had. So there's a Digi for the Digitech, and there's a Lexi for the lexicon. So those are still in my patch today. That's what my patch actually looks like today. But now when I want out-of-phase loops, I have to deliberately go in and put slightly different times in all of the delay lines to get that to happen. The phrase blurred lines in the title of this presentation refers to the fact that my work has increasingly crossed boundaries within music and across disciplines. The happy accidents part of the title of my presentation is, of course, about things like what I just described to you. And I should have said when I was mentioning that thing about the out-of-phase loops that probably some of the most important aspects of my work come from happy accidents. Those are the things that happen when you don't know what you're doing, so you do it wrong, and the mistakes end up being way more interesting than whatever it was you were trying to do. But getting back to this blurred lines idea, the other thing is that I'm inspired and influenced by great works from artists all across the spectrum of disciplines. And when I get excited about something I see, I often want to dive into that world. So I tend to have a hard time staying in my lane when it comes to making work. And as such, my body of work has expanded over the years beyond the solo voice and electronics compositions to include fixed media, scores for dance and film, tech sound works, chamber music compositions, sound and video installations, and interdisciplinary performance works. I've also made a number of large-scale performance works for voice and electronics, multiple channels of projected video, with staging, lighting, and set design. The first of these works was a work that I made in the 90s about language called Parts of Speech, which took the shape of a sound work and then a performance work and an installation. And then I made one called Gaijin in 2001 about the concept of being a foreigner in the place where you live. And that piece involved myself and 3 Buto dancers, Shinichi Yovakoga, Kenji Hayashi, and Lee Evans. And then there have been several others since then. But the most recent is a piece called Simultaneous, which I premiered at MoMA in New York during my studio residency there last summer. And it developed out of a project I worked during my Rome Prize Fellowship year. And it involved a 21-channel sound installation in MoMA's Kravis Gallery.
Significant overlap. Very much overlapping. Very much overlapping.
And on 4 different occasions at the end of my residency, I activated the installation with a live performance for my voice and electronics, a chamber ensemble, and 4 channels of projected video.
Same time and the same moment. A lot of things at the same time and the same moment.
Sort of the same.
A lot of things at the same time and
The same
moment.
language?
More or less at the same time, question the same things. We are facing the same problems in the same
At any one time.
At the same time.
more or less at the same time.
A lot of things at the same time and the same moment.
At the same time.
Different layers,
Los
different layers.
At the same time.
I don't know.
With all of that, with all. So back in 2007, I was commissioned to make a video and sound installation for a new media gallery called Recombinant Media Labs in San Francisco. It was in an immersive setup in a room that was 24 by 36 feet with 10 frame lock channels of video projected on 12-foot wide HD screens mounted edge to edge, 3 screens on the sides and 2 on each end of the room, and 16 channels of surround audio. I wanted to make something that was site-specific to that room, so I created a piece called Sonic Gestures, using video of gestures associated with sound. It was an 18-minute loop with 4 sections, including one with extremely time-stretched hand claps, and another with long gestures, sometimes resulting in a 36-foot-long arm reaching across 3 screens. And then there was this fragmented chattery section featuring my 2007 not very smart phone. And then, for some reason, I made this crazy section called the long URL.
http://www.due-to-high-call-volume_extremely long &stick equals you might want to write this down, comma, all one word, plus sideways frowny face, colon, open parentheses. Unknown character, comma, triple forte, /@ greater than 06 dash access m dash exception 91 system failure invalid name invalid characters waiting for _ remote debugger connection.
And of course, that text that you're hearing was whipping more and more rapidly around the heads of the viewers through the gallery's surround speaker system. So, although my work over the years has begun to have some presence in the space of visual arts, it's not so much a shift as an expansion of what I do. But through all of this broadening, sound tends to remain at the center of my work, and the human voice and speech sounds are central to that. So I think a more fitting way to finish sharing my work with you is just to do a little more performance. So I'm going to perform some more pieces for you. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, The marks left on pavement by spent emergency flares are like injured stick figures, like spilled wooden matches, like broken swastikas or doves' footprints. Ballroom dance step diagrams, a collapsed blind person's cane, clippings from a giant's haircut,
A pile of pickup sticks. Nay, 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 ga, 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 jagged London crosswalk marking. A low-res connect the dots drawing. A secret code. A secret code.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. time.